I muted. Back in your life on this Sunday, May 11th, 2025. Hello again, everyone. I sure hope you're doing well. Welcome to our UFC 315 post show. And by the way, if you are celebrating a very happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, hope you have a great Sunday. If perhaps your loved one is listening to this right now, hopefully they're leaving you alone. And a very special happy Mother's Day to our very own Andy, director extraordinaire, who is holding it down for us on this Sunday, May 11th. It's very late or early, depending on where you are, but it's 1:34 a.m. Eastern Time in Montreal, and a card which was somewhat maligned going into it because, it was the UFC's first time back in Montreal in 10 years. The card wasn't as deep. The Canadian fans weren't feeling like they were getting the love that they, had earned and deserved as loyal fans. They were feeling like the card was missing a little je ne sais quoi. If I'm being 100% honest, I feel like it was a lot better than a lot of people predicted. And if I'm being honest, the main event was a hell of a lot better than a lot of people predicted. In the end, we have a brand new UFC Welterweight champion, my friends. His name is Don Giacomo, Jack Della Maddalena, the pride of Perth, Western Australia. He just defeated Belal Muhammad to win the UFC welterweight title. Yes, 48-47, 48-47, 49-46. They say you're not officially a UFC champion unless you successfully defend the title. I don't subscribe to that, but in the end, Belal doesn't successfully defend the title in his first title defense. He met a buzzsaw in Don Giacomo, who had not fought since March of last year, who all of a sudden improved as a grappler, as a wrestler. The last time he fought, Gilbert Burns landed 7 takedowns on him. This time around in a 25-minute fight, Belal Muhammad did not have that same success. Only landed his first takedown in the 4th round. In the end, just 3 total. And it was a back-and-forth war. It was a bloody affair. Rightfully so. Jack Della Maddalena wins, and he wins the title. And in doing so, may have altered the UFC's big plans for International Fight Week. Also, by the way, co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko, well, she got it done for the UFC, and I'll explain why in a moment. She defeated Manon Fiorot in not as exciting of an affair, but she proves once again that she is the best women's flyweight fighter in the world. We'll go through the entire card, top to bottom. This time around, it's just myself and one partner, because our other partner is in Belfast. He's probably sleeping right now. He was doing tremendous work over at the PFL Europe card. If you go on his social media right now, you could see a ton of interviews, a ton of great content. Of course, I'm talking about the patron saint of the Emerald Isle, the host of the critically acclaimed podcast, The Crack, Mr. Pete Carroll. He was holding it down in Belfast. So on this post show, it is just going to be myself and the mayor of the Nutmeg State, the man in the hat, the one and only Chuck Minanal. Chuck, wearing a Detroit hat? What is going on here? You can't wear a Detroit hat, Chuck. What are you doing?
Yeah, I just kind of threw that on. I had a different on, and then I was like, I didn't like the way it looked when I got on the Zoom, so I threw this one on.
Detroit.
It doesn't mean anything.
I thought we disposed of decrepit Detroit.
This is baseball. This has
okay,
nothing to do with basketball, yeah.
All right, well, we're both sitting at 2-1.
Yes.
I was expecting some sort of mile high, some sort of nugget. That's for a different show. That's for a different pod.
That is a different show.
315 has come and gone. Chuck, quick thoughts right off the bat. That main event was a hell of a lot more entertaining than I think a lot of people expected.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's also just the way it unfolded, because I wasn't sure if JDM would be able to keep up with Belal through this fight, but instead, those first couple of rounds, it was him who was being the crisp striker, kind of holding his ground in the middle, moving forward, landing the shots, kind of setting the pace for a fight that was like going against one of the great pace setters in the sport, and certainly in that division. So those first couple of rounds, man, are really where you get your attention, and where it becomes a very good fight is when Belal starts to find his rhythm somewhere in that 3rd round, starts to get, he would get those rushes to the fence, get him up against the fence with the takedown attempts. And even though he wasn't landing them until the 4th round, he was able to kind of create offense off of that. And once that started, man, it felt like a little bit of a downhill moment for him. Like he was, meaning his momentum was rolling downhill. And then you get an incredible 5th round where he gets hurt you can choose the way you want to look at it. Which way do you want to look? Muhammad, being able to take those shots, which would have certainly finished lesser guys. I mean, the heart of a champion right there, just taking some of the shots he took. Or, just JDM kind of laying it on and making sure that he was going to be the champion in that fight. Just classic stuff, man. 3 different fights kind of crammed into one. It all forms this crazy plot-twisting narrative, but a really fun one.
Yeah, so much respect for JDM. When you consider the fact that the guy had not fought since March of last year, suffered an injury, a gruesome forearm break in that fight against Gilbert Burns, multiple surgeries, the infections and whatnot. He's supposed to fight Leon Edwards. One of the more unheralded title challengers, right? He didn't come in with a ton of momentum. I think most people almost forgot of his last fight against Gilbert Burns, forgot like kind of who he was, but maybe that's just the theme of his whole career. Remember, he started his career 0-2 and going into this card, had won 17 fights in a row. But because of that long layoff and because so much changes in the span of a year and a couple months, there wasn't a ton of buzz, hype, momentum surrounding him. And he comes in there, doesn't say a lot of words, doesn't hype himself up, doesn't talk a lot of trash. You even saw in the post-fight interview, he wasn't giving DC much. But holy crap, when he is on, and if that takedown defense and if that grappling is a real thing now and will only continue to get better. When you couple that with his striking, this guy is an absolute force. He's an absolute beast. And I know that people want to give, Belal stick, and I see people coming out of the woodwork now. I see Drickus, tweeting at him and saying like, see you later. And he was one of the more, there it is. Well done, JK. He was one of the more, polarizing champions. He should leave that cage with his head held high. That was a phenomenal performance. He dug down deep. He was, he was beaten up. He was bloodied, and his obvious game plan wasn't working, and he had to adjust. He said a lot about his striking, and he lost it essentially on the feet. But overall, he has nothing to be ashamed of. I thought both men put on an absolute show out there.
It is a crazy thing, and if you were to guess, like who would have a plan B, who would have a plan C, who would have the deeper tools in this fight, you would have guessed that it would be Belal, right? Like he's just been in too many, he's seen too many styles. Oh, yeah. He's been in there with too many guys. Like that's what was kind of crazy about it, was that it felt like once he was thwarted, it took him a minute to figure out how to get any momentum on his side. I know we were joking about the Canelo hands and all those things. I didn't expect him to try to stand for very long in this fight. But I think he was kind of, obviously he was forced to. He couldn't really do much with it. I thought maybe he'd shoot a little more often or try to kind of get it to the fence more often. But, he was meeting a ton of resistance. And I think he was a little surprised at just how they mentioned that, that JDM was a little nervous and all that stuff at the beginning of the fight. I didn't see it. I saw him as completely poised, ready for this moment. And his striking from the jump seemed to me like it was just on point. And his timing, everything about what he was doing in there, I think he caught Belal off a little bit, to be honest, man. And it took him a minute to get into that fight. And you're right. If I were like looking at this fight, I kept thinking, what's going to happen is maybe this happens on the feet, but then Belal will just take it into his world. He'll get control of the fight. Either it's on the fence or he'll dump him along the fence, and he'll just kind of control the action. He just couldn't do it. I was shocked. And the Gilbert, you mentioned the Gilbert Burns thing, seven takedowns. There's also the Basil Hafez. He had like three takedowns. You remember that one? I know it was like weird circumstances, but he got him down for like 7 or 8 minutes. And I was thinking about all that, man. And I was like, it just doesn't add up to success against a guy like Belal. So it was as shocking for me to watch that as I think it was for Belal in a weird way to be experiencing that. It was a very strange fight.
That Basil Hafez fight 2 years ago was the one where everyone like almost jumped off the JDM bandwagon.
Exactly.
Remember? Because it was a short notice fight. They were like, what? You couldn't dispose of this guy who took the fight on 4 or 5 days notice? Goes to show fights change, matchups change. Like you can't put all your stock into one singular performance. I didn't, by the way, to your point, I didn't get the sense that he was nervous. In fact, all week long, he was like super cool, super calm. Like he didn't seem fazed by any of this. Like even at the press conference, at the weigh-ins, the guy is just very chill. He's a chill guy. It's the best way to describe him. Like he does not seem to get too high up, too two down low, and I was really impressed with that performance in your first title fight, going 25 minutes against a grinder. Like, that's the thing with Belal. He will grind you out. He will keep on coming. He has tremendous cardio. He's obviously very strong. He puts on a really, really impressive pace. And he just kept on coming. Even in the corners, he was just very calm. I was really impressed. And look, we have to address this because it's the thing that's happening right now, and this is what everyone's talking about. The fight may not have been the biggest in UFC history. On paper, it wasn't the most anticipated title fight in UFC history, but the stakes, and you guys talked about it brilliantly on The Crack yesterday, the stakes were just so massive. And so as we sit here right now, Chuck, the stakes are sort of fluctuating. They're evolving in front of us because Islam Makhachev, literally seconds after the fight, which is an interesting one because he wants this so badly, and yet his quote-unquote friend just lost his title, which to me is strange. Anyway, he just tweeted, "Time to become double champion, #inshallah, let's go." And so I suppose, as we had all been predicting, if Belal lost, Islam would move up and he would challenge JDM, who was asked, by the way, good question from DC. DC asked him about the fight against Islam. I loved his response. I'll get him back for Vogue, which was great, seeing the Australian unity. But the question that now remains is, and it was made a little complicated yesterday when Islam said, "Yeah, I'll move up, but I ain't vacating the title." Ilia saying, "I ain't fighting for no interim belt or number one contender belt." What the hell does that mean? Personally, and I'd love to ask you, okay, let's just assume Islam is going to move up now to 170. He has to vacate the title. If the dude who is sitting there waiting for a title fight at 155 just vacated his title, the 155 title has to be vacated if Islam moves up, no?
I agree 100%. I mean, and I don't understand how the UFC would give, in this situation with three divisions basically being affected over the course of this, why they would give Islam, all power over the situation. I really don't know why they would do that. It doesn't make business sense. And Ilia Topuria, arguably, I mean, I know Islam does numbers. It's crazy. Like, it seems like he's a little quieter, but he does numbers. But Ilia Topuria might be one of the biggest stars in the sport. So I don't know how you're going to say that his fight with Charles, if this is what ends up happening, is not for a belt.
No, it's got to be.
It's got to be, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And you're not going to create a sort of interim belt while he's off on a lark. It doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like that he would have to vacate that belt. By
the way, I currently rank the most exciting or the sexiest fights that the UFC can make right now. Number one, Jones Aspinall. Number two, Islam Ilia. Ilia has an incredible fan base. Aura, what he did at 145 was unmatched. But I got to be honest, after tonight, I'm very excited to see JDM versus Islam. It's not quite Ilia. You're not? You think he gets
no? So this is what I was curious about, because I was like, okay, we talked about this ad nauseum, kind of going into this, like, if JDM wins, it's going to usher in this. It'd be like this kind of buzzkill that his era will start because, hey, guess what? I just rained on your parade. You don't get the fight you wanted. But what I was curious about was, would we change our mind, or would we just be like, okay, wait a minute, this is actually a crazy fight? I'm kind of with you. Like, as I was watching this unfold, especially as Muhammad was when he was coming on from the third and fourth rounds, and it looked like now he's turned the tables and he's doing what he does, right? Like, he's pushing the pace. He's landing the shots. It looks like now it's his fight. To watch Jack then, dig deep and pull the fight out and going away at the end, that's when it occurred to me. I was like, man, this becomes more, I guess I was discounting, Della Maddalena a little bit in this fight. But now that he showed me this, there's something about that revs up the idea. So it feels less like I thought it would in a buzzkill sense. It doesn't feel like a buzzkill. It feels like there's a new intrigue.
Look, this is what I think should happen. This is what I think should happen and what I would like to happen. UFC 317, International Fight Week, is, if my math is correct, this is the 11th, 19 plus 28. What's 19 plus 28? 47.
47, yep.
47. Is 47 days away, right? It's 47 days away. JDM was just in an absolute war. Why can't Islam fight Ilia in 47 days and then win or lose, his next fight is at 170. Why can't there's one guy left, and it's such a gigantic fight. It's the second biggest fight that the UFC could put on. Some might say the biggest, given how popular they both are. Why can't he fight in 47 days? If Belal was going to win tonight, if what we're being told is accurate, he was going to fight in 47 days. So why can't we get that fight in 47 days? You have now cleaned out the division, including 2 featherweight champions, and then move up and go after 170, either after losing the belt or you move up and get the second title. Why can't that happen? I don't understand. If you were already willing to fight in 47 days, if Belal would have won, you're telling me if a couple of judges scored it differently,
it's a great
you were fighting in 47 days? You know what I mean?
No, it's a
That's
great
the part
point.
that I don't understand.
And
If I'm the UFC, I'm kind of annoyed.
And like, if this happens, I mean, I guess the only risk is that maybe you potentially lose like the sheen of his the invincibility or whatever he's, if he moves up, like maybe that goes away. I don't know, but honestly, if that's the gamble, I'm like, I'd be willing to take it. Besides, I'm positive that Islam is a betting favorite there, right? Like I think that's going to be he's, Ilia's coming up to challenge him, and he's the bigger fighter. Well, I know that he should be the bigger fighter on fight night, but like, it's his belt, and I think that he has shown a level of dominance that Ilia is still trying to ascend towards. He would still be the betting favorite. So I would much rather they do this because you're getting kind of everything at that point, right? Everybody's getting their wish, but I don't know. I feel like we're only being ladled information, in terms of, maybe you're kind of a little more tuned in than I am, but like in terms of the public and what Dana and everybody is kind of saying and the fighters themselves, you're just not hearing everything. It's not satisfactory to understand their thought process on this.
Yeah, I checked in with Ilia's team this evening asking, do you guys think you're going to like get the official announcement tonight? And they said, nah, probably not. Maybe early next week. I'm like, golly, this is like the longest freaking story saga of all time. In case you're wondering, Dana White has not appeared at the post-fight press conference yet, so perhaps we are going to get that scene of him walking up with the piece of paper, just announcing the International Fight Week main event.
Torn out piece of paper, yeah.
Yes, which is what he did last year. Not quite at around this time, like a couple months prior, but that's how he officially announced the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler fight, which wasn't meant to be. So let's see if he actually does it. But either way, we do have a new champion at 170 pounds. By the way, I didn't ask you this. Do you agree with the scorecards? Like, did you have this for JDM? Because I do see some people had it for Belal.
I did have it this way, and I thought it was 3-2. What did I have? I had the first, first and second was JDM. I thought he set the pace, and then it turned. The third round was pretty close, though, right? Like, I felt like it could have possibly gone either way. So this was either 4-1 or 3-2. And then I thought, obviously, JDM turned it on in the fifth round. So I had, 3-2, but it could have been 4-1.
Yeah, I had the first 3 for JDM. I had the 5th for Belal, and then the 10th for JDM. That's the same as Eric Colon. Mike Bell had it 48-47, giving the first round to Belal, and David Tarian had it 48-47, also giving the first round to Belal. But all 3 judges had it for JDM, so not a ton of controversy there. I don't think it was a very controversial fight to score. Obviously some surprises with the grappling and whatnot, but absolutely not. I mean, I can't even. I'm looking at the picture of JDM, with the belt wrapped around his waist. Like, what?
Surreal.
Crazy, man. I mean, this guy was scheduled to fight Leon Edwards. Like, if Shevchenko doesn't get hurt, the trickle down effect, the butterfly effect of this guy's life is pretty remarkable. So
it shows you how much circumstance matters, right? Like, it just all
100%.
These guys who can get these shots, and you never know exactly how it's going to work, but if they're ready for it when they get it, and I'd kind of discussed this with Pizzi and Ben. You have a guy who's 28 years. I think he's 28, right? He's just coming
28.
in. Just coming into this, right? Like, and that's why I thought this might work against him if I was really thinking about it, like maybe he doesn't have the experience, but 28 years old, generally speaking, this is when you put your foot on the gas and you show for a few years here. It'd be very interesting to see how how he handles these challenges, because no matter who he faces, if it's Islam or one of the other guys, one of the other monsters, it's going to be a monster challenge for him, man. So he's probably inherit like that belt. is the most dangerous one probably going right now. It's just that everybody who's coming for that belt is scary.
28 years old, 8-0 in the UFC, 18-2 overall. Like I said, lost his first 2 pro fights and hasn't lost since. By the way, if you're Ilia Topuria, not sure if he's awake right now. It's I think 6 or 7 in the morning in Spain. Are you pissed that you're not getting this or are you happy that perhaps, with no disrespect to Charles, you may be getting a more favorable matchup?
Man, I think he'd be pissed. Isn't he that kind of guy like that just wants to go?
He tweeted at him this morning.
Yeah.
Happy Saturday.
I think he'd be pissed. I mean, you do the math on this whole thing, this whole equation, and you're like, the big winner is probably Charles Oliveira, right? Through this whole process, because he wasn't sure if he was going to factor into this, and now he clearly seems to. So, I mean, in that way, like now he's going to be in a weird circumstance where he can do something and take a guy's juice who, has that, if that's what they go with. But Charles Oliveira, congratulations, man. That's a big day for you.
Yeah. Islam also tweeting to Belal Muhammad, head up champion. So, showing some support to his buddy as well. By the way, fight of the night.
Okay,
Belal
that's
Muhammad.
what I was going to ask. I was like, you showed me the other tweet first, and I was like, okay, wait, did he say anything to his buddy before he did this? Because it's like a push broom if he didn't. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, get out of my way. Now it's my turn.
Yeah. Well, according to the timestamps, the time to become double champion tweet was at 1:36 a.m. Eastern, and the head up was at 1:38. So it was a couple minutes later.
See, strained relationship.
Muhammad versus,
eventually they'll fight,
Yeah, of course. Long-standing good friends. Jack Della Maddalena. They won fight of the night. Performance of the night went to Jazz de Vicious and Marc-André Barriault. Let me tell you about the entire card, and then we'll talk about the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko defeated Manon Fiorot via unanimous decision, and it got a little dicey there maybe for a second, but overall I think a fight that also wasn't tough to score. We'll talk about it in a moment. One that was certainly controversial was the Iman Zahabi versus Joe Aldo fight. Iman Zahabi winning that fight via unanimous decision. I did not agree with the judges' scorecards. I will ask you about that in a moment. Joe Aldo afterwards taking off the gloves and not 1,000% saying he's done, but implying that he just doesn't have it anymore, that it was a tough week. Remember, he missed weight. They had to change the fight to a featherweight fight and seemed to imply that he was done. We'll see. He was, dabbling in the world of boxing before returning to the UFC, and obviously the last 3 fights in the UFC have been somewhat bizarre, so maybe he just wants out of this particular circuit. Natalia Silva is very close to getting a title shot, I would say. She defeated Alexa Grasso in somewhat of a surprising affair. I say surprising, if only because I don't think that was the best, even remotely close, that we've seen from Grasso, and I was expecting a big bounce-back performance from her. Benoit Saint-Denis had a bounce-back performance, speaking of which, a tremendous one that he specifically needed. He beat the late replacement, Kyle Prepelec, who, valiant stuff, took the fight on just days' notice, but BSD was a man on a mission. He had to get this. He had to get back on track, and he did just that. Mike Malott looked fantastic, winning in the prelim headliner, defeating Charles Radke. There was some bad blood, some back and forth, a lot of words exchanged. He gets a tremendous knockout in the second round. Shout out to Mike Malott. The aforementioned Jazz de Vicious got her best win by far, submitting via rear naked choke the former champion Jessica Andrade. Did not expect a win like that. She is knocking on a number 1 contender fight door, if not a title shot as well. Modestas Bukauskas defeated Iwan Kuchilaba via split decision. Navajo Sterling defeated Ivan Ersland via unanimous decision. Marc-André Barriault had a vicious, brutal, scary knockout of Bruno Silva. And then some clips online afterwards showed that perhaps Bruno's skull got cracked. I'm not sure. They carted him out. It was scary, scary stuff, but vicious stuff from MAB. And then to round it out, Daniel Santos defeated Jung Lee via unanimous decision, and Bekset Amahan knocked out Brad Katona in the very first round. Let's go back to Valentina Shevchenko. What did you think of that co-main event, Chuck?
It was very interesting in the sense, like, I don't know how you felt about going into this, but it's similar to the main event. Like, you're sort of you think about the strengths, and you're like, how is this going to play out? And I was a little surprised because I thought Fiorot. And am I saying her? I feel like they were saying her name like different than I've been saying
it's in French. It's Fiorot. They were saying Fiorot.
Yeah. Okay.
Fiorot.
Fiorot. So 3 syllables.
Yeah.
Okay.
How'd you say it the first time?
Something similar to that, but not quite. It's
let's hear.
I say Fiorot.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's better.
All right.
It's good. So I like that. Yeah.
He came in, and I thought that she would actually be the one who would set the pace a little bit, just given the way she handled Blanchfield and some of other fighters that I've seen her against. And that wasn't the way it went down. It was actually that she gets bloodied up right away, and it took until the second round for her to start to kind of get into that fight. I was just a little surprised, but there's a little bit of me too that's like, maybe I was discounting Valentina. I do this occasionally where you just think for whatever reason that a champion it's probably their time, that we'll see them slip. I think I believe this within the Grasso, through the Grasso trilogy and the Tyler Santos fight before him, because that was a very close fight. It just felt like she was not at her very best. But here she shows up, and it's not just that she was persevering. She was out. There was the striking, there was the spinning stuff she was doing, there was the thwarting of the takedowns, there was her own attempts, kind of mixing it up. It was just kind of like everything, and in a weird way, they were mirroring each other. It became almost like a stalemate in chess, like where they're kind of nullifying each other all the way through 25 minutes, and one person is kind of landing some shots, and I think she dropped Manon at one point. And the other one is kind of clinch, control time, and all this. And you're like, okay, how are we going to score this in the end, right? Like, it just came down to what will they value? And in the end, I think they got the right one. I don't know how you felt about it, but I was like, if it's a straight fight, and I know that's not how they judge it, but if you're just like, they were in a fight, 25 minutes, who won, you'd be like Shevchenko. And I think if you break it down into the rounds, that's kind of how it went for me too. 3-2 for her.
I agree with that. 3-2. My overarching takeaway was the UFC brass breathed a sigh of relief in this one, because think about the permutations on this one. Think about what's at stake. Valentina wins. You're getting Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili, which is the absolute best women's fight that they could put on right now. That, of course, doesn't account for whether or not Amanda Nunes is coming back. But even if she is coming back, Amanda Nunes versus Juliana 3 or Amanda versus Kayla, I don't know if it has the kind of juice, or at least like the high level MMA that Zhang Weili moving up to try to become a double champion against Valentina. If there was ever a time to do that and to kind of hold back a division, if you will, or maybe even two, it's now, because number one contender at 115 is probably Virna Jandiroba. Number one contender at 125 is maybe Natalia Silva or Jasmine Jasdovic. It's like there's no one really that the crowd is dying to see, at least right now in those two weight classes. Zhang versus Valentina is tremendous, right? I mean, like who is not signing up for that? If Valentina loses, now what are you faced with? Like, you're faced with
You're right.
It would have been honestly, it would have been kind of a disaster for them. So
you speak French. Like, does she have charisma that I don't understand, or is she just kind of a speaking bromides and because I interviewed her and I felt like I didn't
she
get
doesn't
much,
open up. She doesn't open up. She doesn't like to do media. She has, I hate to use this word, but she does have a lot of swag. She has like French hip hop swag. She's very into that scene. She's a skater. Like, I could see her connecting with French people, but she doesn't really want to do the other stuff. We had her in studio. She doesn't have that sort of
that. Yeah, I revisited that. She had the snow cap. She's talking about snowboarding and the rapping and all that. I mean, she seems interesting, and that's why I wanted to talk to her. But anyway, it could have been. I mean, it would have been tough. I know she would have been the first undisputed French champion, and there would be some novelty to this. But at the same time, at a moment in time, and I've seen fighters like it recently. I don't know, Matt Brown and some others have been talking about this. Just the waning of the women's ranks. Just that you're not getting that kind of juice that they had back in the day when Ronda was around and Amanda was around and all that sort of thing, and Cyborg was still doing the thing. This, to me, was that moment, because it would have careened, like you just said, into some direction that you're like, I don't know, man. I don't know how much interest there's going to be in Manon, like being the title holder. But I do think, especially because Valentina, were you impressed with it? Because I thought that she was impressive enough too. It wasn't like she just kind of won it was a long 25 minutes, but it wasn't like she won a boring decision. I felt like we saw some vintage flashes of her, and also just her grit, her willingness to put herself through that still to get to this point, to the point where I'd be intrigued to see that, that kind of that title versus title fight. Like, it just, to me, that feels fun. Yeah.
Especially because I think Zhang is the best fighter in the world pound for pound, and has earned that. And so her moving up to 150, 125, especially after her last performance, I don't know who the favorite would be. At 125, I feel like Zhang would still be the favorite. Am I crazy? After the performance she just had against Tatiana Suarez?
I think so.
Crazy thought.
That was just, and she's almost, to me, I've talked about this probably to you before, but she almost has a GSP thing going on where she lost her title.
Mm-hmm.
She had to understand how bad that hurt, right? And then she comes back, and now she's guarded against any kind of complacency and goes the extra mile to make sure that she's going to be better than her opponent. And I mean, that the Tatiana fight to me was the one that sold me on that. I was like, okay, she's as good as she's ever going to be right now. So I do believe that she would have to be the betting favorite in that fight.
I appreciate that Valentina seems to be evolving and aging in a very smart, calculated way. You almost were just describing her, like she lost her title,
right?
And maybe she's not putting herself out there, but she's like, yeah, I ain't losing this again, at least not anytime soon. And so two very sort of workmanlike, veteran, smart, high IQ performances. One against Alexa Grasso in September to regain the title, and then this one against Manon Fiorot. All week long, Chuck, we had been talking about whether we're going to get that scene of Dana showing up at the post-fight press conference with the piece of paper to announce the International Fight Week main event. Well, the answer to that question is, do you know?
No, I don't. I'm not watching it. Yes,
he's not coming to the press conference.
Oh, what the?
They sent Dave Shaw out.
Come on. What is happening?
Yeah. What is? How do you not show up to the? Come on, man! What? Not even. By the way, forget about the International Fight Week thing. Forget about that. At least to show up to crown JDM. What a performance! What a fight! We got a new king. Shout out to Belal. What a heart! Oh my God! Come on.
Not to mention, everybody understood the sort of subtext or subplot of this whole thing. Come on, you got to address the media after something like this.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Shoddy.
All good. Dave Shaw's a great guy, but he's not going to say anything. He works for the guy. He will never say anything, and so that that is a huge bummer. And I would imagine that the media in attendance are feeling a little bummed about that as well. Can we talk about Ayman Zahabi versus Jose Aldo? I thought Jose Aldo won that fight. I thought he won 28-27. I think off the top of he definitely didn't win the third round, but
you had him win the first two then. Okay.
Yeah, I had him winning the first two.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, it's late. I was very surprised. What about you?
I was too. When they said, because it was unanimous, right? So when they were reading off, they said 28-27, I felt certain that it was Aldo.
Yes,
I was like, because I was like, at the first two, the second round, I mean, there was a little bit of Zahabi was starting. It was similar to the main event. Zahabi was starting to come on, but he definitely, I didn't feel like was distinguishing himself yet. You know what I mean? So it's it really, nothing had happened. So I felt like he'd won the first two rounds, and the third one obviously started off a disaster for him, and then he turned it around, and then it became a crazy fight at the end there. But yeah, I was a little surprised by that, and it's unfortunate, man, because we're talking about all the weird stakes on this. I did a piece on Jose Aldo before this whole thing, and it never occurred to me that this might be his last fight. It really didn't. Because he's going through these processes of still fighting at bantamweight. He's been doing it for 6 years, inexplicably in a lot of ways. He's still fighting middling guys within that division, and there was just no real sign that he would do this. And if he retires, this would be that's a very strange development out of this whole thing, isn't it? And if he retires, I'd be like, it becomes even more glaring to me. You probably won. I would have to actually watch again, but I'm like, you would probably I'd be like, you probably won that fight, though. I feel like you did win that fight.
So he takes off the gloves. He starts speaking in Portuguese. You've got Fabiano translating, and so you're kind of waiting for.
You get nervous watching Fabiano when it's that long. I sometimes I hear like you see him shaking his head. I'm like, you're not going to remember all that shit, man.
I'm stressed for him. And then he's going from Portuguese to Spanish. We even had Derek this week, who also does the Portuguese, doing French. I mean, I get stressed for all these guys. I don't know how they remember, especially in the moment. And you want to capture the essence of what they're saying, the emotion. It's an incredible skill.
And there's always somebody fact checking you. Like there's somebody out there 100%. Like, oh, you got that really wrong there.
And they're like watching it, pausing it, rewinding it, instead of doing it, like you're doing it in the moment in front of 18,000 people. But the quote that I wrote down was, "I just don't have it in my heart anymore. I think this is the last time you'll see me." Again, that's via translation, but he did take off the gloves, and he did seem bummed, and he did miss weight by, it was supposed to be a 35, 36 fight, and he ends up coming in at 143 after Sahabi's team got the call at 8 a.m., so an hour before the weigh-ins, and they were just told that he wasn't going to make the weight, and here's the deal. Now, they couldn't take a percentage of his purse because there had to have been a 5-pound difference due to the Quebec Commission, so they had to cut a deal and give him more money, and in the end, he took the fight. And so, I kind of feel like he just wants to go back to doing the fun boxing fights, and there needs to be some sort of discussion as to like how the last chapter in his UFC career was handled. These 3 fights were just bizarre. The scoring in the last fight was weird. The scoring in this fight was weird. There were no stakes attached to any of these fights. He wasn't. It's one thing to fight like up and comers, guys who you can clearly tell that they've got a lot of stock in. That he wasn't even fighting those guys.
Right.
Like, he wasn't fighting guys that they were pushing. He was just fighting tough, somewhat unheralded guys. Very, very weird. So I feel like he's done with MMA, but not done with fighting. That's my sense. But in the end, I thought he won that fight, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
same here.
I feel for him. I love Zahabi. Love that he represents Montreal. He was the best story on this card as far as Montreal is concerned. He was the people's main event by far. His brother being there, he was always in the shadows of Faraz. He was always in the shadows of Team TriStar, of GSP. He was just like the guy kind of around, helping Kenny Florian, helping everyone out. And now to see him get this moment in Montreal is an incredible thing, because I never thought he would actually come out of those shadows. And yes, he looks like me. And yes, I get a ton of tweets and texts every time he fights. And it's a lot of fun. Although I kind of feel weird about it, because I feel like I'm like taking, like, people want, like, even when we post things, it's like, this is his moment. I have nothing to do with it. Stop trying to make it seem like I'm fighting. But anyway, he's cool about it as well. So that's why I lean into it. But I thought upon watching it live, I thought Aldo won that fight 2-1. What a third round, though, by the way. Holy shit.
It was very poetic. If it ends up being it was like, so it was almost like he was holding on to this ounce of Aldo magic, and he emptied the full reserves in that moment, because he sprints forward, he's doing all this stuff. It looks for a minute like he might actually get the finish. It was like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy, like out of nowhere. And then it's just gone, it was just gone. Those last 3 minutes are almost terrifying, because if you think about those situations, and I've heard fighters talk about this before, where they're like, I had nothing left, and you have to survive, especially when you're on your back. And they're saying drop elbows, and they're just dropping elbows on you and busting you open. You're just huffing air, and it's like existential, right? Like, it's just one of those things. You're like, man, it's got to be one of the worst situations. That 3 minutes had to seem like 3 weeks, So, yeah. but that round was. There was something really crazy about it, because it was like he found it in himself to just have this last burst to kind of show this vintage Aldo moment, where he came forward and left it all in there at that moment. It was a crazy thing, man. And it's, again, I thought that's why I was like, you'd like to have seen him get if he was going to call it quits after this, like, I wish he could have just gotten his hand raised there.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought he did enough. It wasn't just like a charitable thing. Actually reminded me a little bit of Jose Aldo versus Mark Hominick, who was in attendance from UFC 129, the way that fight went. Side note, loved seeing some of the old Canadian legends in attendance. Mark Hominick, Sam Stout. Can I tell you the warmth that I felt in my heart seeing Rory McDonald reemerge. Like he just sort of disappeared.
That was cool. I didn't think we'd see him again.
I never thought we'd see him, and certainly not at like a UFC sanctioned function to be feted like that, to be celebrated. Seeing him like he's one of those guys who just fought and left, and you kind of felt wanted nothing to do with any of this. Was done with all of it. Had found religion, all that stuff. Seemed to be very happy. Seemed to be at peace. Family man, all that stuff. And so and there were some hard feelings when he left the UFC and all that.
Yeah.
Just to see him come back cool. and be so, it made me so happy. Really,
he was one of those guys who, it was almost like, because he started so early, right, out in British Columbia, and like he came up one of the first guys to actually train all the disciplines and was very well rounded. But it was almost like by the time he was, those last couple of fights, it felt like he'd got it out of his system. So when he said that he was leaving and he didn't really want anything to do with it anymore, I fully believed him. I honestly didn't know if we'd ever hear from him again. I thought he'd be my next Jason Thacker.
Yeah,
like where I'm like trying to search
Still
him.
Could be.
I know that's what I mean. Like where you're trying to like whatever happened to him? Where did he go? Like 10 years from now. But yeah, it was just cool because he seemed also like he did like a Q&A or something, right? I saw some people posting.
Oh, it was great.
It looked like
him.
He looked like he was in
David
great.
Loiseau, GSP, Valerie Letourneau. Like it was really cool to see those. Canadian legends, pioneers, whatever you want to call them, get this moment and then attend the event as well. So shout out to him. By the way, going back to the Shevchenko Zhang Weili thing, she just posted this, Zhang Weili, which seems to suggest that she is into this. There she is standing in front of a very large television, giving the old thumbs up to Valentina. God, I would love to see that fight. It's the absolute best women's fight that they could put on right now. There's no doubt about it.
Shevchenko's not. She's not going to last. Like she's just somebody's going to beat her soon. So it's like you're going to do it now or you're not doing it.
I mean, she almost lost tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of breaks here and there. At 30, this is from Aaron Bronstetter. At 37 years of age, Valentina Shevchenko is now the oldest fighter at any men or women's weight class of welterweight and below to successfully defend their title.
Wow,
which is a crazy stat. Also, that was her 10th victory in a title fight. That's 1 behind Amanda Nunes and Anderson Silva, 2 behind DJ, 3 behind George St. Pierre, and 6 behind John Jones. But that would make her
that's wild.
Almost one of the most decorated champions in UFC history, and one away from tying the most decorated female champion in UFC history. And she now has 14 UFC victories in her career, which I believe is good for third. Jessica Andrade has 17, Nunes 16. She has now 14. Yes, 14. That is accurate. From my good friend Jedi Goodman. So a pretty amazing feat there and a pretty amazing night for Valentina Shevchenko. If in fact they don't go that route for whatever reason, Valentina versus Zhang Weili, I guess it's Natalia Silva. Do you think it's Natalia Silva or Jasmine Jasdavicius? Probably beating Alexa Grasso. I don't know, actually. Beating Alexa Grasso or beating Jessica Andrade. I feel like they're neck and neck. Or maybe the move is, Chuck, Zhang fights Valentina and then Natalia Silva fights Jasmine for a number 1 contender fight at 125.
Now, does Blanchfield and Barber factor into this?
Jeez, yeah, that's coming up.
Well, that's the only That's the only factor. And I mean, they all kind of have cases, but then I guess it depends on if
Blanchfield lost.
True.
Silva's undefeated. Silva's had a crazy run here.
Well, Blanchfield rebounded and beat Rose.
Yeah, but I know, but she has a loss in there. Silva's undefeated.
Yeah.
Does have the win over Andrade before this win, so probably she's a little bit ahead of Jasmine.
I mean, if Macy went through Blanchfield, though, they may, because it always feels like she's getting a little bit of favor period, but I don't think you go wrong with Silva. She's exciting and look at her volume, man. She goes in there to fight. I feel like the UFC should be thrilled to have her ascend to that level. A lot of times that type of fighter can't get there because they'll just get pieced up, but she's very good. Like she's very elusive too, to be as volume and like to stand in the pocket as much as she does and kind of get in and out of there. She's exciting, and then she's put together this win streak, right? So I feel like she should probably get. If I'm doing it, I'd go with her next. If we're going to have Shevchenko next.
Jasmine's right up there. That's a huge win over Andrade, especially to win via rear naked choke. I know Andrade maybe isn't who she once was, but she has really come into her own as well. So, by the way, overall, not the worst night for the Canadian crew, going 4-2. Obviously, the Zahabi one somewhat disputed, but Jasmine with the win. Her teammate at Niagara Top Team, Mike Malott, with the win as well. Marc-André Barrio. That was a scary knockout. Did you see those clips afterwards of the head indenting the top of the skull of Bruno Silva?
No, I didn't. I did not see that. But I mean, the way he face planted, even from the first part of it, right? He just face plants in a way that you're like, I hope he's okay. This is before he'd been down there for minutes. You're just like, I hope he's okay. Anytime somebody does that, you're just like, ooh, because it's you worry about their neck and all that sort of thing and the extra punches. But who was the guy that MVP was? It
Evangelista
Santos? Yeah.
Yep. Cyborg.
So was it something similar to that? Because that was one of the most.
Oh yeah, but it was like
you think you build up your immunities to like this sort of thing, but that's something that's like, oh, that's just horrific, man.
Yeah, scary stuff. And then he was carted out on a stretcher. Just awful stuff, but vicious and impressive stuff.
They did come back on and say that. I mean, they kind of did an update, right, about his status. I don't know if that was all accurate, but I know, right? They came on there and said he was, the X-rays checked out or something, and
all right.
So, I mean,
maybe it's just like some people have like those heads that kind of when you like. What was that guy? Carlos Boozer. He had like those lines.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Carlos Boozer, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. He had rolls. Like somebody was like,
rolls. So
it was like the cartoon that they're pushing the skin down.
Yes, exactly. So maybe just one of those things. I don't know, Chuck. Who the hell knows? By the way, another thing of note that happened on this evening was Vitor Belfort announced as one of the 2025 Hall of Fame inductees. I asked his agent, Lloyd Pearson, if he had any idea. He had no idea this was coming. He was just there as a guest fighter, and you saw the emotion. It did bring up somewhat of a debate, in baseball. They're steadfast in this. Which one? The long overdue?
Well, you just said, hey, he's being inducted. They're just basically stating the fact, and I saw the trail of
are upset.
Comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think? Should obviously, like, it's apples and oranges, right? In baseball, it's being voted on by the writers, and there's a whole committee. Here, it's just a couple dudes in an office who say, let's bring him in. To be honest, a little bit surprised that he hasn't been inducted yet,
right?
Considering he's been fighting for almost 30 years. But do you think someone who has any type of infraction on his resume should be excluded?
I mean,
from the UFC Hall of Fame?
If we're the ones doing it, right? If we're the ones voting him in, yes, this should be a red flag, because it's not just that he did it, but he was sort of the poster boy, He was the guy that all debates swirled around, because whatever year that was, 2016, that they were just kind of dropping guys into Brazil, and he was savaging them, including Michael Bisping, who that's where his eye got affected and all that stuff. I mean, I think you really have to look at that, because even in this, like, you can point out in the fight game, a lot of people have been doing, look at Pride, all this stuff, but at the same time, nobody really was a kind of public, figure, like an advocate, I guess, of TRT and like the exemptions and all that stuff, because we used to have MMA Beat, and we talk about this all the time. About all these different things, but I feel like he's the poster boy for it. So to put him in, it's like, he's carrying a red flag with him to the Hall of Fame, right? That's the asterisk he's always going to have.
Yeah, but like, there's other guys with,
Oh, for sure.
Anderson
for
Silva,
sure, but
there's other dudes.
Yeah, but I mean, just in terms of physical transformations and his ability and everything, it was like just the way his career played out. Like the moment when he was at his very best, when he was able to do TRT, to like when he starts losing and he's a different, like, he just looks different,
100%.
It was,
no, 100%.
It was very visible. It was very visible.
I'm just saying, like, why draw the line at Vitor? If other guys have gotten in, clearly, that's the policy. They don't care. And to be honest, like, I've always viewed the UFC Hall of Fame as sort of like the wall of fame, the ring of fame, whatever you call it, for a sports team. And he was a huge part of their history. So why the hell not?
No, on those terms, for sure. Like, if you're good, I mean, nothing's controversial that way. Only thing that's ever controversial that way is the guys that they don't bring in, right? Like Shamrock or something. Like you're like, why not? But
By the way, I want to give a shout out to Tim Simpson. What a day for him of the Chosen Advisory Group over in Belfast. His guy Paul Hughes picking up the massive win in 42 seconds. Homecoming, an emotional scene. PT did a tremendous job of chronicling it all. Even spoke to to Paul in the aftermath.
Yeah.
You can see that interview on his Instagram. So that was his guy. And
did you watch it?
Jack Della was his guy as well, and he won. Did I watch it? I did watch it.
Okay.
It's insanity that in the year 2025, any live sports is not available. Like it just blows my mind, especially an American-based company. I understand. What was told to me was in America, ESPN has the exclusive rights to the PFL. So it doesn't matter if it's PFL Europe, PFL Africa, PFL Middle East, whatever. Any of these other events, if ESPN doesn't want them, they can't air them anywhere else, including for free on YouTube. That's just weird. A tough deal. It's a tough deal because you're having some of your best events, if not your best events, overseas in places like Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, Paris, France, etc., and people here can't see them. Now, I'm not crazy. I know a million people are probably not going to watch it, but that was a great scene. That was one of their best scenes ever, and he's one of their biggest stars. You have to figure out a way to televise that in some way, shape, or form, stream it here in North America. And so afterwards, Don Davis did tweet that he has listened to us, and he is going to deliver 3 years later, and starting June 1st, there's going to be an announcement. Who the hell knows? So he saves the day. But
well, anyway, I look forward to watching it whenever I can. I look forward to watching the fight in its entirety whenever I can.
Well, it's just 42 seconds. You can find it on Twitter. But no, actually, I was able to get a link and watch it, and it's all very stupid. It's crazy because it was a great scene and it was a great win, and hopefully he does get that fight against Usman Nurmagomedov. So PT will have more on that throughout the week. We'll talk to him about that. He'll be back on the crack, and loved seeing him do the interviews behind the scenes. It was great crack. Cool. It was great crack. Dare I say? Yeah. So. In the end, Chuck, we do not get the answer that we have been looking for. We still do not know who is going to main event UFC 317. But what we do know is that Jack Della Maddalena, amazingly, is the brand new UFC welterweight champion. I say that because I don't think anyone could have predicted this 3 months ago, that he would even be fighting for a UFC title, let alone becoming the UFC champion. So it's a wild twist and turn. I do believe Belal's, there's some sort of irony attached to the fact that perhaps his most exciting fight is the fight in which he loses the title. But I do think his street cred and his I don't know, his stock goes up, in some weird way, shape, or form. And I want to give a shout out to Andrew Feldman on Twitter. He just posted this photo of how Belal looked in the aftermath. Take a look at his upper lip, reminiscent of Robbie Lawler and Alistair Overeem. From back in the day. Like that is not fun. Like if you eat spicy food, that's going to hurt for the next few days. So
can feel it.
Much respect. Not to mention the cut under the left eye over there. So
is the UFC happy about this? Like if they had a druthers in this, I mean, obviously it wasn't as simple as who would you rather have as a champion, Belal or JDM, right? It's like it's the full package of what that means for the guys who are fighting, against them. So do you think the UFC is okay with this, or do you think they wanted Belal to actually win this thing?
So if there wasn't the Ilia Islam stakes attached to it,
right,
I would say unequivocally happy. Remember UFC 300, they offered the welterweight title fight to 3 different people, including a non-welterweight, in hopes of not giving it to him. Like they could say whatever they want, he could say whatever they want. They did not want to give him a title fight, and they weren't over the moon that he beat Leon Edwards. Because this maybe changes some potential plans, maybe not thrilled, but I'm not putting it I'm not putting it past the UFC that they don't some way somehow figure out doing Ilia versus Islam.
Man.
I know the general consensus seems to be that it is now going to be Ilia versus Charles, but we did see the photo of Hunter Campbell in Dagestan. I'm not putting it past them just yet. I'm not putting it past them that even Islam himself is throwing us a curveball. Maybe the deal is, hey, fight this last fight and then win, lose, or draw, you get to move up to 170.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put it past them just yet. So I'm not going to write that. But overall, to answer the question, I would say yes, because I don't think they were enamored with the idea of him being champion.
Okay. That's my feeling too. And I will latch myself onto your optimism on this, because I'm with you, man. You laid it out. It's Tom and Jones. It's Aspinall and Jones is number one, but Ilia and Islam is definitely right there as number two. The two fights, and I just feel like we don't. So many times we get these moments where you can get a big fight like this, and we don't. And I'm like, you'd like to see one of them come through.
Yeah, and the fight is in a month and a half. It's literally in a month and a half, and then he can go on and fight Jack. Jack's not coming back anytime soon, so it's not like the timing is off. The timing actually helps. Let's see if they actually go in that direction. So the possibility of Zhang Weili versus Valentina is very much a thing, and I'm holding out hope that this one is a thing. If not, we'll get JDM versus Islam and Ilia versus Charles, which isn't a bad plan B.
No.
But I think we all know what they want as their main event for International Fight Week. So, all right, it was a great night. Shout out to Montreal. In the end, they ended up filling up that building, $6 million or so gate. So not quite Miami or Las Vegas, but definitely a lot better than the last time they were in Montreal. Who knows when they'll come back? But I enjoyed seeing my hometown in focus and get the spotlight. And then up next for the UFC is Newark, New Jersey, the Prudential Center, The Rock, with 2 title fights on the line. Chuck, nice doing this solo.
Yeah,
with
man.
You.
Did you have any
It's not
FOMO?
quite
Did you have some FOMO not being there? Would they have treated you like the WWE? Wasn't it WWE when you're in the building and they they made a big deal?
Would they have shown me on camera?
Yeah, they're showing you on camera and all that stuff.
Look at you, Chuck, instigating at 2:30 in the morning. To answer the question, I did have some FOMO because I've never missed a Montreal UFC. I wasn't in the building for UFC 83, which was the first one, but I was in Montreal. It was actually like my first sort of fight week. It was the first night of Passover, so I decided not to go, but I was there. I felt it. It was exciting, all that stuff and more. And then I went to every single other one afterwards. So it was a little bit weird. But I was my kid had a soccer game today. I got to watch the Knicks get their ass whooped by the Celtics. It wasn't a bad day.
Yeah, and I mean,
and it's Mother's Day tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm with you 100%. Those things matter more. But I was going to say,
it's a long show, Chuck. It's a long show, huh? My son, this card started while my son was playing at 6:30 in the morning, and here we are at 6:30 p.m. and some 8 hours later, we're still talking about it.
Well, you mentioned the Katona fight. I'm like, didn't that happen like 3 weeks ago? What do you mean it happened earlier today?
It's so freaking long. It's unbelievable. Oh my gosh, we're getting old, Chuck, but it's always fun to do these with you in the wee hours of the morning, and I will look forward to the next one coming up in a little less than a month for UFC 316. Any other hard-hitting questions you want to ask me before we go?
No. But
what about a final thought?
The final thought was going to be that I was going to say that in Montreal, I was thinking about last time we were there. As Montreal was like 10 years ago. It was a very cold April, and we were on some kind of stairwell doing the pre-show. And I got a little nostalgic, man, because they were showing it. And I was like, man, those were kind of the good old days. You had like Bisping and Dalloway and Horiguchi and all that stuff. I mean, it wasn't quite the show, and I've always felt bad that the show was not as, it wasn't the Montreal shows we were used to, because I always thought that those shows were so magical, and then you get that one, and they hadn't been back in 10 years. It made me think about that whole thing, and I was like, oh man, I kind of missed those old days,
Oh yeah. The GSP Koscheck, GSP Condit, GSP Diaz, like that was a fun stretch.
All of those, man, stuff. 154,
hey, by the
158.
Way, yeah. Hey, look at you. You're not bad with the numbers. One more tweet from Islam.
Okay.
11th hour. Here it is. You are not Volk. I will show you different level. Keep my belt clean. All right. We're selling it. Maybe maybe my optimism in seeing that fight in 47 days is not.
I guess Islam controls all destinies. All right, we'll just go with that for now.
Now, does he actually keep the belt? I guess that's the big mystery. So many freaking questions, Chuck. Can we just get some answers? Golly.
Some bullshit that Dana just skips out.
Yeah.
Can't do that, man.
No, you cannot. Poor Dave Shaw. All right, we are done. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you to everyone who stayed up with us. Thumbs up to you. Thank you to the boys in the back. Great job on the watch party. Thank you to the crew staying up wee hours of the morning. I don't even know if they're awake. Frank, are you awake? Is anyone up?
No.
Yeah. Perfect. And of course, we shall be back on Monday to talk about this and to talk to some interesting people. Give us a thumbs up. Give us the old subscribe. If you're listening to this, give us the old follow. And we appreciate your support so very much. For the man in the hat, for Pizzi, for myself, for the boys in the back, for the entire crew, thank you so much for watching and or listening. We appreciate you all very much. Good night. Happy Mother's Day. We'll talk to you on Monday.